Welcome to Primary Care Premises podcast from BW Healthcare Surveyors. I'm your host, Will Ellis, and today we're going to be talking about succession retirement planning, what to do with your premises. So what are your premises options? So you have several options to think about when deciding what to do with your premises. The first thing when you're thinking about partners retiring is what are you going to do? Who are you going to bring in to replace them? So obviously how to find new GP partners. So are there perhaps salaried GPs that can become GP partners? You can even have pharmacists or nurse partners now, practice manager partners. So there are alternative partners that can come in and potentially take over the partnership from the retiring partner, potentially take over the shares, the ownership of the premises, or become leaseholders and take over their lease as well. So that's certainly the first option I think that most practices look at when you've got a retiring partner. Is there anybody that come in and can just replace them? They retire and somebody comes in to replace them. That's kind of the easiest way to think about it. But like most practices that are struggling with recruitment, which seems to be a national problem at the moment, there are alternative options to think about, perhaps instead of finding somebody to replace the partner. Now, one of the first things that you could potentially do is look at sale and leaseback. So from a premises point of view, if one of the biggest issues for partners coming in is that they're struggling to find the funds to buy out the partner, perhaps you could take that issue away from them. And the way you do that is by going through a sale and leaseback. So an investor would come in and purchase the premises, not just the retiring partner's share, but all the partner's shares in the premises. So they would come in, purchase the premises, and then put a lease in place with the GP partnership as the leaseholders, as the tenants of the premises. So that's kind of how sale and leaseback would work. It's a great option for practices who are struggling for recruitment if the big issue is partners struggling to find funds to purchase the premises. Now, an alternative option to that is perhaps the partner that's leaving doesn't actually want to sell their share. They're very happy with retaining ownership of the premises. You could actually look at putting a lease in place with the retiring partner as the landlord, leasing it back to the remaining GP partners. And that, when you've got a lease in place, it provides you a lot of flexibility when it comes to recruiting new GP partners, because a partner that's coming in can come in and potentially become an owner of the premises, to purchase a share in the ownership of the premises and be landlord and tenant. Or if they don't want to risk that, they don't want to, or they can't find funds to buy into the partnership, they can just be a leaseholder and just be a signatory on the lease. So putting a lease in place with the retiring partners as the landlords and the existing partners as the tenants provides a lot of flexibility and will allow options for incoming partners. Also, when you've got a lease in place, it will give you the opportunity to potentially sell the surgery at a later date. Now, when you go through a sale and leaseback that we've just talked about, before you can actually sell the premises, you're going to have to put a lease in place. So you go to market with the premises and the assigned lease, because the lease terms are going to determine the value of the premises. So without a lease, it's very difficult to determine the value of a premises when it comes to sale and leaseback. So if you're putting a lease in place initially, because that's the option that the retiring partner wants to do, doesn't want to sell their share, then you've already done that stage. You've already got that lease in place. So if in perhaps 5 years' time you then decide to sell, it's very easy then just to go to market. You've already got the lease in place, and it's a far simpler process if you decide to do that at a later date. Another option is to merge with another local practice. So you could perhaps merge with a practice within the PCN or another local practice and join forces. You can merge partnerships and keep the premises separate, or you can merge the premises as well. So again, perhaps speaking to your local PCN, your local surgeries, and just exploring the possibility of practice mergers. And then another option is transferring the contracts to another entity. So we've kind of dealt with the premises side of things, with your options being sale and leaseback. So an investor comes in and purchases the premises, or putting a lease in place so the partners retain ownership of the premises even when they retire. Now, what if you've got a couple of partners in the premises and they're both nearing retiring, but you're struggling to recruit and bring anybody in to take over the practice? Now, what's going to happen then with the practice? Are you going to think about potentially closing the surgery? Now, if that is an option, in order to avoid that, there are organisations that you can look at transferring the contracts to. So rather than the contract being held by a GP partnership, it could be held by a third-party organisation, for example. So there are specialist third-party organisations who would come in, take over the contract, take over the lease if you're in a leasehold premises, even look at potentially purchasing the premises if you're in an owner-occupied premises. So third-party organisations can certainly do that, but also PCNs can do that now. So there's a PCN down in Hertfordshire, I believe, who were awarded a PCN contract back in September. So it's the first of its kind. So the first PCN to be awarded a GMS contract. And there's also a GP federation. There's a couple of GP federations who last year were also awarded GMS contracts. So these GMS contracts are now being awarded to PCNs and federations who are obviously different setup than the GP partnership model. So hopefully that will kind of set the scene for what's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years, and the options of contracts, GMS contracts being held by GP federations and PCNs become more and more popular, and just give you options away from that GP partnership model if you have to go that way. So certainly transferring the contract is something to consider, and speaking to your ICB about that, your local PCN, your local federation. Come and speak to specialist surveyors as well. I'm more than happy to have conversations with you about how that works and what your options are. And the last option really is closing the surgery and selling the premises, which is not really what anybody wants to think about. It's kind of one of the main reasons why we've set up this podcast today, to kind of talk to you about your alternative options, so you don't have to go down the route of closing the surgery and selling the premises, because that obviously causes an awful lot of problems from a staffing issue, making staff redundant, but also from the community and the patient issue as well. Also from an ICB issue, trying to disperse those patients to other local surgery. It causes all sorts of issues. So if there's things we can do to assist, to avoid that option, then certainly hopefully some of the things we've talked about today will go some way to stopping as many practices closing this year and in the coming years to come. That's it for me today. Thank you for listening. Join in next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.